Today we will be looking at two horrifying caving stories that went horribly wrong. August 5, 2010. Morning broke over the Atacama like it always did, dry, merciless, ancient. 33 men stepped into the dark. They descended into the San Jose mine near Copiapo, boots striking metal ramps, trucks grinding downward through a spiral carved into the bones of the earth. More than 2,300 feet below the surface, 700 meters, the mountain swallowed them whole. It was never a safe place. The mine had warnings attached to its name. Citations, prior accidents, rumors that ran through the workers like quiet electricity. But risk, when it feeds your children, becomes something you learn to walk beside. By mid-afternoon, they were scattered through the lower levels, drilling, hauling, repairing, sweat and dust turning men into silhouettes beneath their lamps. And then the mountain shifted. At 2 p.m., stone that had rested for centuries betrayed its own weight. 700,000 tons of rock tore loose from the interior. The sound was not a crash. It was a living roar, a cathedral collapsing inward. The air detonated with dust. Visibility vanished. Lungs filled with choking grit. The spiral ramp, their only artery to the surface, became a grave of shattered stone. Silence followed, heavy, absolute. 33 miners stood in the lower sections of the mine, cut off by a plug of debris that might as well have been the edge of the world. They gathered in the refuge chamber, a small emergency shelter never meant for this. It was designed for 10 men, 48 hours, nothing more. There were 33. They inventoried their world. A few emergency rations, water from equipment tanks, minimal medical supplies, helmet lamps, no guarantees, no communication, no certainty that anyone above even believed they were alive. And so they made the first decision that would keep them human. They would ration everything: a spoonful of tuna, a sip of milk, a single bite of peach, every 48 hours. Water measured carefully, light reduced to a dim glow to preserve batteries. Time divided into shifts, leaders appointed, routine established. Structure is the opposite of panic. Above them, the desert sun burned as if nothing had happened. Rescue crews flooded the site. Officials stared down at a problem almost mythic in scale. The collapse was too unstable to clear. Removing debris could trigger another avalanche of rock, crushing the trapped men or killing rescuers. There was only one option: drill from above. But drilling meant guessing. 2,300 feet of solid mountain separated the surface from the refuge zones. The rescuers had to aim blind, hoping to intersect with a tunnel where the miners had chosen to survive. Drill in the wrong place and the bit would punch into empty rock, miles from where 33 men waited in the dark. Days passed. Steel began to chew through stone. And below, in a chamber never meant for so many beating hearts, 33 men waited, not knowing whether the sound of drilling would ever reach them, or whether the mountain had already decided their story was over. The mountain had held them for 69 days. Now it was time to give them back. Above the desert floor, under the relentless sun of the Atacama Desert, the rescue teams stood around the newly completed shaft, 28 inches wide, 2,300 feet deep, a thin mechanical umbilical cord connecting two worlds. The capsule waited beside it. They called it Phoenix, after the mythic bird that rises from ashes. It was a narrow steel cylinder, barely wider than a man's shoulders. Inside were oxygen lines, communication systems, and just enough room to stand upright without collapsing into panic. On October 12, 2010, the capsule was lowered into the earth. Slowly, the cable hummed as it paid out. The shaft swallowed the capsule inch by inch. Dust clung to the air. Families gripped hands. Cameras broadcast the moment live across the world. Presidents watched. Miners from other countries waited with their own helmets on, as if spiritually on shift with the trapped men. 2,300 feet down, in the refuge chamber of the San Jose mine, the 33 men heard the mechanical vibration approaching. It was not the distant, uncertain rumble of exploratory drilling. This was direct. This was coming for them. The first miner chosen to ascend was Florencio Avalos, selected for his physical stability and calm demeanor. The strategy was deliberate. Send up the strongest first, the weakest in the middle, the leaders last. It was structured. Controlled. Disciplined. Avalos stepped into Phoenix. The hatch sealed. And for the first time in 69 days, one of the buried men began moving toward the sky. The ascent took approximately 15 minutes. 15 minutes of steel scraping against rock. 15 minutes of being suspended in darkness, alone. Inside a metal tube no wider than a coffin. 15 minutes of wondering whether the shaft might collapse, whether machinery might fail, whether hope might snap like cable under tension. At the surface, the capsule emerged into floodlights and silence. Then the hatch opened. Avalos stepped out. He did not run. He did not collapse. He walked forward into the arms of rescuers and family, blinking in the electric glare of a world he had not seen in over 2 months. Cheers broke the desert silence. The impossible had become real. One by one, the capsule descended and rose. Each trip required precision. Engineers monitored stress on the shaft walls. Doctors checked vital signs. Immediately upon extraction, every miner wore dark glasses to protect eyes weakened by prolonged darkness. Each man carried the physical evidence of survival: weight loss, sunken cheeks, hollowed frames, but also something harder to quantify: endurance under pressure that few humans ever experience. The operation continued through the night. Phoenix descended. Phoenix rose. Again, again, again. 33 times. Some miners laughed as they emerged. Some wept openly. Some knelt and kissed the ground. Some stood still, overwhelmed by open air and stars and wind across their faces. The final man to ascend was shift supervisor Luis Urzua, the leader who had maintained order underground, who had rationed food to spoonfuls, who had structured days so that chaos would not devour them. True to mining tradition, the boss left last. When Urzua stepped out, the rescue was complete. 69 days, 33 men, 0 fatalities. What began as a collapse of 700,000 tons of rock had become one of the most extraordinary survival stories in modern history. The mine had been sighted. The risks had been known. The collapse had been devastating. But beneath 2,300 feet of mountain, human discipline, rationing, leadership, and stubborn refusal to surrender had turned a potential mass grave into a global miracle. The mountain moved, but so did they. And when steel met stone and a capsule named Phoenix descended into darkness, the world watched 33 men rise from beneath the earth, not untouched, not unscarred, but alive. When the last man rose from the earth, the world exhaled. For nearly 24 continuous hours, the operation at the San Jose mine unfolded under floodlights and live cameras. Millions watched from living rooms, bars, public squares. In Chile, the night air carried not silence, but anticipation. The first miner brought up was Florencio Avalos, selected for his composure, his steadiness, his ability to describe the capsule's performance once he reached the surface. The capsule, Phoenix, descended through the narrow shaft like a mechanical heartbeat, disappearing 2,300 feet into the mountain. When Avalos climbed inside and the hatch sealed, the ascent began. 15 minutes. A slow metallic climb through stone. When he stepped out into the Chilean night, blinking beneath lights and cameras, the crowd erupted. 1 down, 32 to go, and the system worked. Through the night and into the following day, Phoenix traveled up and down the shaft in a relentless rhythm. Each round trip took roughly 30 minutes. Down empty, up with a man inside. Again, again, again. Some miners emerged smiling. Some wept. Some staggered, weakened by confinement. All had lost weight, 20 to 30 pounds in many cases. 69 days of rationing spoonfuls of tuna and sips of milk had hollowed their bodies, but not broken their resolve. Doctors waited at the surface to assess dehydration, infections, vision damage from prolonged darkness. Each man wore dark glasses to protect eyes unaccustomed to sunlight. Yet for all the physical deterioration, they were alive. The final ascent belonged to Luis Urzua, the shift supervisor who had organized food, structured routines, and held discipline underground when hope wavered. True to mining tradition, the leader came out last. When Urzua stepped into Phoenix, the refuge chamber below, occupied since August 5, became empty for the first time in 69 days. When he emerged, it was over. 33 men, 0 fatalities. The story would ripple across books, documentaries, and films. The mine itself was permanently sealed, declared too unstable for further operation. The mountain had yielded its captives, but it would not be trusted again. March 18, 1984. Spring Valley Caverns, Fillmore County, Minnesota. 15 cavers entered the earth that morning with maps, survey tools, and quiet competence. This was not an extreme expedition. No flooded sumps, no razor-thin squeezes, no 1,000-foot vertical drops. Spring Valley Caverns was mostly walking passage, tall chambers, broad corridors. Stable limestone. At least, that was the reputation. Years earlier, someone had tried to commercialize the cave. Wooden stairs had once stood at vertical drops, complete with railings, infrastructure designed to make the underground safe for tourists. But tourism faded, maintenance stopped. Wood, in a cave, does not endure. By 1984, those stairs had rotted into collapse. Moisture, fungus, and time had reclaimed them. What remained was a single 3/4-inch galvanized pipe, vertical and stubborn, the last skeletal remnant of a staircase that no longer existed. The cavers split into smaller groups, 3 or 4 per team. Their task was methodical: push remaining leads, survey unmapped passages, document blank spaces in official cave records. Professional. Routine. One group carried a painter's wooden ladder, the kind designed for painting gutters or ceilings. Adequate for suburban houses, questionable for limestone breakdown. But caves rarely offer perfect solutions. At the southwest end of a large chamber called the Grand Canyon, named for scale, not geography, a 5 to 6 meter wall of breakdown separated lower passage from upper. Breakdown is deceptive terrain, collapsed ceiling blocks, piled at angles, boulders balanced on other boulders, surfaces that look solid until weight shifts them. It is not smooth rock. It is rubble frozen in place by gravity and luck. The wooden ladder became their bridge. They positioned it against the breakdown wall, climbed carefully, passed gear upward, one by one. Above them, that lone galvanized pipe stood embedded in the rock, a relic from the tourist staircase. Ignored now, irrelevant, or so it seemed. Caves do not collapse dramatically most of the time. They fail quietly. A shift of weight, a movement transferred through stone, pressure redistributing through rock that has waited decades to settle. What was routine at 9 a.m. would not feel routine much longer. Because sometimes the most dangerous environments are not the ones that advertise themselves as extreme, but the ones that convince you they are safe. He said yes. It was automatic, reflexive, the answer people give when the alternative requires admitting something has gone very wrong. But his right shoulder was already deforming beneath his suit, the joint visibly displaced, the kind of injury you don't need medical training to recognize. The kind that makes even small movements feel like electric fire running down your arm. They helped him sit. The cave was quiet again, that particular, mineral silence that follows sudden violence underground. Headlamps cut sharp cones through still air. Limestone walls reflected the light back in pale, indifferent tones. No collapse, no flood, no dramatic cave-in, just gravity, timing, and one misjudged step. They assessed him methodically. Pulse steady, conscious, coherent, shoulder clearly dislocated, possibly more. In a hospital, this would mean sedation, reduction, X-rays. Here, underground, it meant something much simpler and far more difficult. They still had to get him out. Spring Valley Caverns does not offer a straight corridor to daylight. It is walking passage, yes, but walking passage layered with uneven floors, breakdown mounds, and that same 5 to 6 meter wall that had just nearly turned catastrophic. To exit, they would have to reverse everything. And now one of them had the use of only one arm. They stabilized the shoulder as best they could, improvising support. Reduced movement, controlled pace, no heroics, no rushing. The wooden ladder, that 1 foot too short ladder, became an obstacle again. This time there would be no fluid transitions, no single smooth motions. Every movement was broken into components. Grip, test, step, confirm, transfer weight. 2 people climbed above him. 2 below. Alexander in the middle, protected from both directions. When they reached the breakdown wall, the same galvanized pipe stood there, silent, vertical, unchanged. The pipe that had nearly been irrelevant. The pipe that had prevented a full fall. This time, nobody moved quickly. They lowered him carefully, voices steady, instructions simple. Foot here, weight on me, slow. His shoulder flared with each shift in gravity, but he stayed upright. Stayed conscious, stayed deliberate. Breakdown below absorbed their boots as they reached the lower passage. From there, it was distance and endurance. Fatigue, the same fatigue that had contributed to the fall, now threatened again. But adrenaline had sharpened everyone's focus. The cave that had felt familiar hours earlier now felt precise, demanding, unforgiving in small ways. They moved as a unit. When they finally saw daylight filtering into the entrance passage, it didn't arrive with drama. Just a soft gradient of gray becoming pale white. They emerged one by one. No helicopter, no televised rescue, no headlines. Calvin Alexander was transported to medical care. The shoulder was successfully reduced. He recovered. 15 people had entered the cave that morning. 15 people went home. 3 separate environments. Superheated water in Yellowstone National Park that dissolved flesh in seconds. A collapsing mountain above the San Jose mine that sealed 33 men underground for 69 days. A routine survey trip in Spring Valley Caverns where a single missed rung nearly rewrote the ending. In each case, nature did not act with malice. The hot spring did not rage. The mountain did not choose. The cave did not plot. They simply existed, governed by physics, temperature, pressure, gravity. What changed the outcomes were human decisions. A man diving into boiling water for a dog. Engineers drilling through 2,300 feet of rock with precision and persistence. A stranger in Georgia building a fire for 10 hours in 23-degree cold. A caver reacting instantly instead of freezing when a friend fell. Disaster stories are rarely about villains. They are about margins. A foot too short. A temperature 100 degrees too high. A delay measured in hours. And sometimes, just sometimes, about the thin line between catastrophe and survival held in place by a single pipe, a single drill bit, or a single calm decision made in the dark. He said yes, because in that moment, okay didn't mean uninjured. It meant alive, it meant conscious, it meant able to put one foot in front of the other. Pain is information, and the message his shoulder was sending was brutal but clear, damaged, not destroyed, functional, not finished. So he walked. They moved together through the remaining passages of Spring Valley Caverns, past the survey lines. They had run earlier in the day, past chambers that hours ago had felt ordinary, past rock that now seemed sharper, closer, more deliberate. The cave had not changed. He had. Every uneven step transmitted a flare of white heat through his arm. The joint was unstable, grinding slightly with each shift in balance. But adrenaline is a powerful anesthetic, and purpose is stronger still. The only objective now was daylight. They reached the entrance. March air rushed in, cold, clean, ordinary. He emerged under open sky, and only then, when the mission of survival was complete, did the injury assert its full authority. Medical examination confirmed what the impact had written into his body: dislocated shoulder. The head of the humerus forced violently from the socket. A chip fracture. One small bone fragment floating. Inside the joint capsule, a quiet souvenir of a moment that lasted less than a second. Inches. The margin between a painful story and a fatal one had been measured in inches. If his foot had not caught between those ladder rungs, gravity would have finished its sentence. 5 to 6 meters onto unstable breakdown. Head first. The kind of fall where the optimistic outcome is paralysis. The realistic one is silence. Instead, chaos aligned in his favor. A foot trapped at precisely the right angle. A galvanized pipe gripped, in instinct. Teammates who moved without hesitation. Random physics intersecting with human reaction at exactly the right time. Later, in the report, Alexander did not blame the ladder. He did not blame the pipe. He did not blame the cave. He wrote the word most survivors resist: carelessness. Momentary, thoughtless, subtle. He had tried to do two things at once: step down and turn simultaneously. A fluid motion born from familiarity. A movement that would have worked if executed with full attention. But it was the end of the trip. And the end of a trip is where danger waits. Not because the cave grows more aggressive. Because your brain begins to leave before your body does. Fatigue does not announce itself with drama. It whispers. It steals edges off your concentration. It convinces you that routine equals safety. That the environment you navigated all day no longer requires deliberate respect. The official conclusion captured it with clinical precision. The need to concentrate becomes more important as it becomes more difficult. Not physically difficult, mentally. Because muscle fatigue is obvious. Cognitive fatigue is invisible, and in places where gravity is always present, where rock does not forgive imbalance, where a 5-meter fall onto breakdown is never theoretical, focus is the final piece of safety equipment. The ladder was 1 foot too short. The pipe was one handhold. The fall was one missed rung. And the difference between routine and disaster was one drifting thought. That is how caves injure people. Not through spectacle, through margins.